aquela água sua? Você tava na mão? Aqui você tava com uma garrafa de água na mão, não tava? É. Com sede, eu tô vendo miragem.
Tá vendo miragem?
Caralho.
Divulgação é importante. Muito bom, né? Não me convidaram, mas eu vim. Então, a mocinha me perguntando se podia ir no lago pra ver a canoa, essas coisas.
Manda aí.
Eu tô sem carro, pois é.
Ah, você levar?
Pode
Pegar um táxi aí.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. My name is Felipe. I'll be your Brazilian commentator today, and I'm here with Mario. Mario, please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Mario Martinez from the International Wushu Federation, Wushu TV. Thank you, Felipe, for the introduction. Very happy to be here in Brasília, Brazil. I'm a former U.S. national team coach and national ranked judge. Very excited to see the events. We'll be coming to you live from Arena 1, where we will have boys Changchuan Group A with a total of 26 competitors. Felipe, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for the intro.
Well, the pleasure is mine. Actually, this is my first time attending this kind of event. So my main role here is to ask silly or simple questions to Mario so he can actually explain to me and to you that is out there that doesn't know about this sport. And what I can tell you, like the very first contact that I had, it looks very interesting, very beautiful, very complex with a lot of information. So the idea is to share with you all this precious information about this sport. And Mario is the expert that's gonna really introduce this beautiful sport to you guys. So Mario, what do we have today here? What is happening right now? Please explain to me.
So right now, the judges are all being announced. We're getting ready to start underway. As soon as the judges are announced, we will then get started with the first competitors. I can see the athletes all lined up, getting ready to begin. In Arena 1, we've got boys Changchuan. In Arena 2, in our other live stream, you can check out boys Nangun B group. And then, of course, in our Sanda ring this morning, you'll have junior boys 48 kilogram and junior boys 52 kilogram. You'll also have some other events later in the morning, but we'll stand by here for the judges to get announced, and we'll get started here shortly.
Show? Na hora que ele for entrar no tatame, aí eu venho abrindo, tá? Tô ali no centro, velho. Nozes.
Não sei, Marcos. Cadê os moleques pra andar? Coloca qualquer voluntário, não pode? É, chama o moleque na parada. Marcos, pode chamar qualquer um que não tem que fazer nada. Qualquer um. Qualquer um. Pega dois aí que não faz nada ali e coloca ali. Beleza?
All right, here we are with our first competitor from Indonesia, Bonish Singh Tingbaitam. And I'm sorry, that is an athlete from India.
Nangun B. Exit number 1 at the arena.
Eu? 2? Tô centralizado, tá no meio da tela.
Now, Felipe, the athletes that we'll be watching this morning are
Yeah.
typically 12 to 15 years old. And in this event, they'll be performing the international compulsory routine in Nangun.
I
So
see.
you'll see many of the same techniques. Athletes, judges will be looking for required movements. They'll be looking for the striking elements of the routine and the overall composition.
Okay, great.
Of course, in this event, there will be A and B judges in junior international competition. A judge scores an overall total potential of 5 points. B will also score 5 points. Now, the A judge will be looking for technical deductions.
Okay.
And the B judges will be looking for the overall performance. How strong is the athlete? How the athleticism, power, rhythm, flavor of the form. There we have our first competitor.
Now he's done.
He is done.
What do you think?
Years old. And in this event, they'll be performing the international compulsory routine in striking elements of the routine and the overall composition.
Okay, great.
Of course, in this, but technical deductions really hurt your overall score.
Sure.
The technical deductions can be, on average, a 0.1 deduction.
Yes.
However, they can range up to a 0.3. So if you take a 0.3 deduction,
Wow,
I mean,
you're
it can
out.
really pretty much drop you in the rankings. Yeah.
Okay. I guess he was a bit nervous. I think he's the first one.
Yeah, you know, that always plays a big part. Where you are in the rankings, you know, they draw a lot. So
Yeah.
it's completely random what, you know, where you will go. So it's a little nerve-wracking for sure to go first.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see.
You
I
wouldn't
mean,
choose. You wouldn't choose
yeah,
to go first
right,
if you
you
had the
don't.
option. No,
Yep,
never.
No, never. No.
Yeah. And the last one too, or no? It
Last
depends.
one, it depends. It really depends on what athletes compete before because, you know, if there are strong athletes that elevate
Sure.
the score high,
Yeah.
then it depends. You
Yeah.
have to either rise to the occasion or,
Absolutely, you have to outperform that.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, that's right.
Okay. Now the referees are thinking about, do they talk to each other?
They do not. They're not allowed to
Ah, I
talk to
see.
one another. The head judge can see all the scores that are coming in, so that they can see, if it's an appropriate score, if there were any errors that were
see.
made. A judges, the way that the A judges perform is they have a clicker, and so anytime that they see a deduction, they click.
Ah, I
Now,
see.
they have to enter in a code for the deduction,
Ah, okay.
and there's a 3-second timestamp.
Okay.
So if a minimum of 2 judges have to agree on the deduction.
Okay.
If the deduction is caught by 2 judges within that 3-second time frame, then the deduction is taken.
Oh, I see.
So it's very clear cut, the deduction time frame.
Okay.
And then B judge, of course, is looking at the overall performance.
That's why they're taking their time now to decide or no?
Yeah, well, usually at the beginning of the event, they're working out the bugs, they're seeing
Yeah, I
how
see.
each judge works. Sometimes people are getting familiar with the scoring system. So sometimes there is a slight delay.
Mm-hmm.
We
Do we
need
get to see the scores?
Quer que eu feche nele aqui?
score 8.68. Entry number 3, enter the arena.
So I guess the total is 8.68.
Yeah, it looked like there were a couple of technical deductions. There were at least 2 that the judges caught. He's still in first place, though, so I don't know how the rankings are working right now, but we'll see as the system starts going if we're able to provide live updates. And here, of course, is our competitor from Malaysia, Kai Jie. Make sure you check out our Instagram at IWF_official, where we'll be posting an interview with the Malaysia team coach, Hayashi. Be interesting to see what he thinks this morning prior to the start of the events and how he's doing in Brazil. There we have Kai Jie from Malaysia. We'll have to see how the judges score it.
Final score 8.91.
Kai Jie's final score, 8.91. It looks like there was at least 1 technical deduction. He is currently in first place. Felipe, it looks like we had a couple of athletes drop. So up right now is Jongye Park from Korea. Strong team, and Jongye is a prime example of, as you can see, their strong performances.
So I guess China is the strongest team in this sport, but after China, who else can compete against it?
It really depends. There are a couple of different countries that are really strong. Usually the Asian countries are pretty strong, but I think what you're finding is that a lot of other international teams are starting to put out really strong athletes. You know, I think as athletes retire and they become coaches, they see what works for their country, how they're able to train. You know, as a professional athletes, I mean, they train 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
Whereas, other countries, we unfortunately can't train as much. I'm sure
Absolutely.
teams are starting to put out really strong athletes. I think as athletes, people have school, work. So, but you are finding that other teams are starting to be able to place in the top rankings. I'm sure you'll see that here today.
Aqui, ó. Tô com o cara aqui e a tela. O cara que vai sair a nota. O cara tá atrás da tela.
Now we'll have to see how Zheng Ye's overall B score was. The overall performance, not as much power as you would want to see in this event, but we'll have to see how the judges are scoring and what things they're looking for.
Final score 8.87.
Jung Young Park score 8.87. He is currently in second place.
8,87.
We can see our next competitor there waiting. Now, Felipe, this is one of local Brazilian athletes.
Wow.
I'm sure the arena will be very excited to see his performance.
Let's see. I'm curious to see his performance too. Now we are out of the World Cup. I have another reason to cheer here. So that's Brandon Lee Ferreira dos Santos, our Brazilian representative. You can see that maybe the families there supporting him, his friends.
Very strong opening. Now, Felipe, there you can see the power being accented into the Nangun, or the southern staff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the other events, you will see northern staff, or staff, which is more fast. There's a lot of taps and a lot of spinning movements,
I see.
a lot of speed, whereas Nangun emphasize more of the power, and
I
then you'll
see.
see the yells accompanied with the techniques.
Yelling helps in this case or no?
Yes, it does. So there are specific, because this is an international compulsory routine, there are certain yells that need to be done, and they're timed within the form.
Oh, I see. They need to be done then.
Correct.
Wow.
And that's typically accented within the southern styles. Is to accentuate the power,
I see.
the strength. Now here is where it really makes all of the difference in the competitors, right? The athletes are able to maintain the power and the strength towards
I can
the end
see
of
he's
the
getting
form.
tired, right?
Yeah, what you don't want to see is athletes getting tired. So it just depends on how their overall endurance is at this point in their performance. Now, in the other events, you will see northern staff, or staff, which is more fast. There's a lot of speed, whereas Nangun emphasize more of the power, and then you'll see the yells accompanied with the techniques.
Yelling helps in this case or
So
no?
there are specific, because this is an international compulsory routine, there are certain yells that need to be done to accentuate the power,
I see.
the strength.
Oh, he's completely tired.
Very
Look at
tired,
him.
yeah.
Yes. I guess he gave his best. And you were talking to me before our transmission here, the difference between A and B. The A is about the mistakes that you can have, and the second one is about the performance. There you go, 8.24 for our Brazilian guy.
Yeah, so the A score is looking at overall technical deductions. So there's a whole list of actual movements and how they must be done. So how stances must be done, how weapon techniques must be done. And then there are, of course, like typical technical errors, like if he loses balance,
I see.
if an athlete falls down. And then the overall B score is a little bit more subjective because they're looking at the overall performance. So how strong your performance is. Do you have speed and flavor? Athletes, judges really look at the athlete's eyes. Are they
I
fierce?
see.
Are they accentuating the strength of the movements?
I see. Who do we have now then?
Looks like right now we have a competitor from Algeria, Yacoub Gourab.
E teve umas caídas de umas luzes aqui no ginásio. Ó, tá oscilando a energia aqui.
Today then.
I think I'm eagerly excited to see how the countries do. I think every year we see a world championship, we see the world level rise, and that gap between the top countries start to get smaller and smaller.
This is very interesting for the competitions, and for the sport as well, because many other countries can actually learn about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It helps grow the sport. You know, the better we bridge that gap, the more competitive it is. I mean, the more exciting it is to watch as well. Now, of course, if you're watching us live on YouTube, make sure that if you're interested in watching, we are covering Arena 2. This is boys Nangun B group. You can also check Arena 1 right now is boys Changchun Group A. And of course, in the Sanda ring this morning, you've got junior boys 48 kilogram, 52 kilogram, 56, and 65. As always, if you are checking us out online, you can also check out our feed on our Instagram page at IWUF_official. We'll be posting interviews. I know we've done a couple of interviews with some of the Taolu coaches this morning as they were preparing athletes to compete. Be sure to check out, see what they're thinking, you know, how they're feeling, any updates that they have on their athletes. Really good information coming up. We're having a couple of technical pauses in the Arena 2, so just bear with us. We'll get started shortly We've only got about 3 more competitors for this morning. Boys Nangun B, immediately followed by girls Nangun B session, where we have 8 female competitors. Now, Felipe, it'll be interesting how many female competitors we have and if any have actually dropped. I know I haven't seen the Russia team, so I don't think that they're here. So for sure, we will likely see less than 8 competitors. Now, I wonder if that opens up more opportunities for other athletes to place.
Yeah, because you told me that Russia has a very strong team, right?
Yeah, that's right. They historically always produce very strong athletes.
So if they don't show up, that might be good news for the other teams.
Maybe we'll see. You never know.
Again, yeah.
There's a lot of pressure for a lot of these athletes on the world stage.
So I was going to ask you like a very simple question because I can see that you have some Chinese terms here, and I think they refer to the weapon that you are using. Is that correct? Like Nangun is the staff?
Yeah, so Nangun is southern staff, which is one of the southern events. So there's Nanchun, which is southern fist, and then Nandao, which is southern sword, southern saber. Southern styles, of course, are characterized as you saw the yells. It's accentuated by power, difficulty movements. Again, this is Group B, so you won't see any like difficulty movements like you do see for adults. These are compulsory international routines, so every athlete does the same routine, but it gets very challenging. I mean, to me as a coach, this is a lot more difficult because the movements are, may not be the strength of each athlete. So whereas in optional routines, you create your own routine.
And you focus on the strengths.
Right, you can accentuate an athlete's strengths. And here you don't have any choice. You have to do every movement as written within the compulsory routine. So judges know where the difficult parts are. Judges know where the techniques are going to be executed. So it becomes a little bit challenging then. You can't hide anything. They know what's coming up and they know when it's happening.
Oh, that's very interesting. And after the boys Nangun and the girls Nangun, we're going to have these boys?
Boys Jianshu, which is straight sword.
Straight sword.
Yeah, now Jianshu is a double-bladed sword. It's a lot more precise. They call it, the Prince of Weapons. It's like a royalty weapon.
Wow.
So it requires a lot of flexibility, a lot of fluidity. The movements are a little bit sharper, crisper, whereas the other forms, like this one that you saw, Southern Staff, require more power, more speed,
it's just
more
harder
aggression.
to hold it, right? The weapon.
The movements require a little bit more finesse. The techniques are more precise. It's a slicing weapon, so they're all challenging to do. But I would say that straight sword and spear are typically what I think are probably some of the most difficult techniques to emphasize really well.
I see. And then after the boys Jianshu and girls Jianshu, we have boys Daoshu. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, Daoshu is broadsword. So the broadsword, instead of it being bladed on 2 sides, is bladed on 1 end.
I see.
And the broadsword is more for chopping, hacking movements. So you'll see a lot more speed. Now that's not to say the straight sword and the other weapons don't have speed.
Absolutely,
but you will really see some fast techniques within broadsword.
It's like kind of movie style then.
Yeah. I would say that Wushu is a very good transition from a sport to, it conveys itself very good to film. So a lot of the techniques you see in movies are all Wushu. I've got a lot of friends that actually have become stuntmen and do stuff in Hollywood.
I was reading that as well because this is someone that does this kind of sport can get a job.
Yeah, it's very dynamic, and what I've heard from friends who do stunts, one of the most difficult things about doing stunt work is you have to be able to follow choreography. So they teach you a set of movements, and they say, all right, now you have to just execute them and do them well, demonstrate, the technique in your face, how you react to movements. That's Wushu.
That's Wushu, right?
Yeah.
But I guess like some of the movements that you see in the movies, they are not quite the traditional Wushu movements, right? Because they do that for the cinema, or no?
Yeah, it depends.
What I'm saying is like sometimes you watch a movie and go like, wow, they're just pretending to be Wushu. They are exaggerating those movements. We never do that. We never see that in a championship.
Yeah.
Does that happen at all?
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of crossover. I mean, as a Wushu nerd myself,
Yeah.
I can tell you that watching movies, I'll be like, wow, that was a Wushu move. Like that's
Really?
100%
Yeah.
Wushu
Wow,
move. Yeah.
wow, that's
Yeah.
nice then.
Especially with weapons, because of
Uh-huh.
the style of martial arts where we utilize weapons at such a high skill level.
Uh-huh.
The manipulation of the
Sure.
weapons, being able to move fast and
Uh-huh.
execute very precise techniques. I would say that's
The only possibility would be through like Wushu
yeah, that's right.
practice,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There are
Wow.
other styles that do weapons, but I mean, we compete at, and we have international
Uh-huh.
geared competition events specifically with, I mean, accentuating the aspects of that weapon in competition. So I would say that it lends very well to cinema.
See, uh-huh. Excellent. What might be this pose that we are seeing now?
So it could be a number of different things. I mean, it could be the scoring system could be down. It could be a delay. My guess is it's probably a technical issue. Maybe the scoring system is down, and so they're working to get it back up. With technology nowadays, we're almost connected, so
Yeah.
we're kind of at the mercy of that. Now, what'll be interesting to see, now this is another challenge that, an aspect that you can't control in international competition is, how does this affect the athlete,
Sure.
right? We've got an athlete who's getting ready to compete. Now, what is he thinking? How
Yeah,
does he stay
exactly.
warm?
Yes.
He was warm.
And this is very personal as well, right? Because some athletes, they might see that as an advantage because you're too stressed, and then you have an opportunity to maybe breathe a little bit more and see things from a different perspective. You look around, and all of a sudden, you are relaxed
Yeah,
in a
that's right.
different mind
Yeah.
space to do the performance.
Yeah, it can be a double-edged sword. I
Yeah.
mean, the athletes, we've got Iran, Algeria, and China waiting. China's third up, so you got to imagine now he doesn't know how much time he has before he has to compete. He might have 2 minutes, he might have 5 minutes, so how does he stay warm?
Oh, that's
Because
true.
one
Yeah.
big aspect of the sport is, I mean, you can see the
Yeah.
explosiveness
Yes.
of the technique.
Yes.
So keeping your body awake,
Yes.
staying
Yeah, that's
warm
true.
is huge.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, not waiting too long. Of
Yeah,
course not.
yeah.
I mean, I'm talking about maybe 2 minutes,
Yeah,
3 minutes would
yeah.
be an advantage, but of course, too long, then
Yeah.
it can be a big problem.
Now there you can see the standings as it stands. Malaysia is in first place. Taijie is first. We've got Zhongyong Park in second place. And then we've got France in third. Now, of course, it looks like we may have had a drop athlete. So we've got Iran and China coming up. So 2 more competitors now. There's still room for medals.
Yes,
So we'll see.
let's see.
We'll have to see
But-
what Iran.
But Brazil is last, fortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. But hey, it's just
Yeah.
the first event.
Yeah.
Now there in the background, you see Farshad Arabi, who's the Iranian team coach, and his southern athlete. Now Farshad Arabi is a very strong international competitor in his own right. I mean, he's
Wow.
an international, medalist. He's medaled at a couple of world championships. Very strong in this event. So we'll be curious to see how he's been coaching his
Yes,
athletes, particularly this being his event. I have to imagine he's got some gold nuggets to pass on to them.
Wow, let's see. That's interesting.
vermelho foi jogado para fora do ringue 2 vezes. Parece que eu tô vendo um software, que ele deve ter o juiz reserva aqui, eu não sabe o que dizer, não.
Fight number 10 at the arena.
And of course, you can hear the Iranian spectators cheering for our next athlete from Iran. Madhi Kanai Husani. Starting off really strong.
Yeah, really strong. Wow, what a lot of energy.
Now we'll have to see if he can maintain that power and that strength and speed throughout the routine. Third and fourth section, of course, the routines are made up of about 4 sections.
Mm-hmm.
Third and fourth section is where you can really see how well an athlete is prepared. So far, he's looking really good. He's still looking strong. Here we're coming to the end of the routine.
Nice. And the routine, normally it slows down towards the end.
So it depends on the routine. For some,
Really strong. Wow, what a lot of energy.
he's still looking strong. Aspects of this weapon or event, so that it can develop Wushu in other countries. So it was kind of developed to accentuate all of the main techniques of that weapon.
Because I realized that he was very strong in the beginning and the end as well, but I get the feeling that the first movements, they had to be stronger, and towards the end, the event kind of slows down. I don't know if it was the athlete's performance or if it's like the routine style.
Well, that's a really good observation, and so there it could be a number of different things. One is it could be the routine. That's just the nature of the routine.
Yes.
It could be that athlete's way of doing the routine.
I see.
Because although the routine is the same for everyone in these compulsory events, it's up to the athlete what he wants to do fast. Now there are certain movements that have to be executed quickly, but the overall flavor and rhythm,
I see.
you know, athletes want to stand out.
It's like an interpretation of the...
Right.
I see.
When you're competing with 10, 12 other competitors that are doing the same thing you are, you want to stand out as much as you can. Now, having said that, if an athlete is getting tired, there may be ways to hide that by changing your rhythm a bit up. And then also, you could be just really accentuating specific types of movements for the judges. Make sure that they see I'm strong, see what I'm doing, you know, I'm able to execute.
Wow, so many details, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things to think about as a coach and as an athlete.
And as a judge as well, as a referee, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It must be very difficult, you know?
Yeah.
Because it happens so fast and they have to make a decision right there.
We're standing by for Iran's score. Of course, we wouldn't expect anything less than a strong performance from Iran. You know, Farshad Arabi being with his coach. You can, of course, check out his interview from earlier today, Farshad's interview. He gave us a little bit of a note of how many competitors Iran brought. You can check that out on our Instagram page. We'll be posting a series of interviews with athletes and competitors, coaches. We'll see if we can get you a good insight into the 7th World Wushu Championships.
Now, this is very interesting because I can see the Chinese athlete there waiting, and he's the last one, correct?
That's right.
And do you think that if he sees like the score of the previous athlete, would that influence his performance? At this moment, he's the last one, and if the previous athlete scores really high, he would go like, he would think like, oh my God, maybe that's the gold medal there, and I have to really just give my best. Or in other words, should you see the scores?
It really depends on the psychology of the athletes. As a coach, I can tell you I don't like my athletes to see scores.
Exactly, I would say that.
Because, you know, we train athletes. Athletes train for hours to be able to execute. And nerves plays a big part in how they're going to perform. So the less stress that the athlete has, the better they're able to just execute at their level. Now, it is China.
Yes.
So I think you're going to see him just go as strong as he can.
And I get that in the end of the day you're competing against yourself, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to outperform yourself. So
That's
why
right.
should you think about those things before
That's
your
right.
performance?
Now, I mean, there is strategy, don't get me wrong. If, you've seen that maybe you can perform at a certain level and maybe the level's lower, or, and you can kind of coast a little bit. But, I mean, at this level, you have to imagine every athlete is going out on the carpet giving 110%, the best performance that they can. And sometimes that even becomes even more challenging is how do you calm an athlete down so that they perform what they can do and don't try to reach and push beyond what their capabilities are.
Wow. Well, yeah, these are skills that a coach must have, right?
Yeah. No, it's
to
about
be able to define this fine line.
Yeah, it's about knowing your athletes. And coming up as our final competitor, Shanghai Jang from China. Now, Felipe, you can see the precision. I mean, just the landing on techniques, the strikes, everything is very precise. That's Shanghai Jang. Now, Felipe, you can see the so there may be a little bit of variance in that, but typically speaking,
He's the young one here.
yeah, he's the underdog, but he's a strong.
There we go.
Shanghai's final score, 9.04. He broke nines.
Amazing.
First place, well deserved. Now, Felipe, one interesting thing to see is, although he got a 9.04, it looked like he did receive a technical deduction. Now, I can't see from here what exactly it was, but for sure he got an A group deduction. So that goes to show you, even the most professional level athletes, even at that age, anyone can make a mistake.
Absolutely, yeah.
So his score would have been actually slightly higher. It may have been a 9.14 if that was a 0.1 deduction, for example. We won't know without seeing the actual deduction, but that was, breaking nines is huge here.
Wow. Very close to perfection then.
Yeah, he was a good solid point over the top three.
Take into consideration, let's suppose that he had a deduction, and then what about the other points before he could get like 10? What do you think, like the referees thought? Maybe
it's
what kind of criteria?
10 is almost it's unattainable.
Yeah,
it's perfection.
Oh, let's say 9.5. Let's say 9.5 or 0.6 or.
So it very likely is the overall B score. So to give you an idea, the A score is 5 points, and that is technical deductions.
Yes.
And the overall B score is 5 points for overall performance. Now,
what's the criteria of the B? Is
so
it like subjective or
it is
kind of?
So so B is defined as the technical execution with regards to power, harmony, rhythm, style, overall performance, and then it's graded on. There's 3 levels: superior, average, and inferior. Within those 3 categories, there's 3 subcategories.
Wow.
So in superior, there's 3 categories, and there's 3 ranges, score ranges for those categories. In superior, you're looking typically at 4.21 to a 5 points. Okay. In average, you're looking at a 3.01 to a 4.20. And then in inferior, you're looking at 1.51 to a 3.0. So number one, I would say one important aspect is no technical deductions, because that's something that's in your control.
Okay.
You don't want to make any
Absolutely.
mistakes.
Yes.
You want those 5 points. Beyond that, typically the way that the judges judge is they'll look at your overall performance when you begin your performance. So that's why a lot of the times you'll see how athletes begin very strong. It's because at that time the judge is deciding, is this person superior, average, or inferior? This is the range typically that I'm going with.
First like 10, 15 seconds.
Right. Now that's not to say that as the performance drags on,
yeah,
you go,
sure.
okay, no, this guy needs to drop
It's just
down.
a great start.
Right. It's a good start. So you see that range. And then once you selected whether they're superior, average, or inferior, then you choose from the 3 categories. So it requires very experienced judges to be able to know this is a good international standard, this is below average, this is average, and how they're standing out. So I would say that what makes a big difference is, of course, the overall B score. So that's what you attribute to the 8.9s and the 9.01s that we're seeing. So I mean, that goes to show you. I mean, China is professional level, right? These athletes live and train. That's all they do.
Yes.
So even at that level, a 9.0, you're looking at a 9.01 for an international China athlete. So that just goes to show you how difficult it is for that overall performance score.
What was the highest overall performance you have seen?
Historically, at a world championships, I mean, for adults, like 9.4s, 9.5s are like amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Even in China, it's still about 9. I would say it ranges everywhere between 9.1 to a 9.5, maybe 9.6. But at those levels, you're talking about elite levels. I mean, you're as close to perfection with no mistakes. Yeah.
You have to be really inspired as well, right?
Yeah.
On the day.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen...
This is the room for inspiration, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've seen is it's the details, right? At any world championships, everyone's strong. All the athletes are amazing. Everyone.
We had like here from 8 point something to 9. It's just like 1 point.
Everyone is very athletic. So it comes down to very basics. Very, very minute basics. How strong is your punch? How strong is your kick? How fast do you jump? Your precision. How you look when you perform. Your eyes, fierce. All these aspects all help. But I think once you start getting at the top levels, like the top 3 are sometimes indistinguishable from one another. So it's those small details that the judges are looking for that will really elevate one athlete from another. Ideally, the top 3 athletes have no technical deductions, right? Because they're that good.
Sure.
So it really comes down to like, how strong are you? How do you perform? How's your rhythm?
How are you feeling today?
Yeah. It really comes down to. I mean, and this is a huge thing as a coach, is making sure that your athletes are healthy. I mean, you have to imagine the travel for some of these athletes. Like, we're on Brazilian time; it's 10:45 here in Brasília, but in Europe, I mean, what time is it?
And also the weather. Like,
that's
here,
right.
Brazil is a very dry city, very, very dry.
Yeah.
Like, humidity in the air goes down to 10% sometimes in this period of the year, like 10, 15%, and it's very difficult to breathe sometimes. You get like, some people get like a bloody nose sometimes.
For a lot of our world championships, like the last world championships, adults, last year was in Kazan, Russia. So weather's totally different there. Food is totally different.
Absolutely.
So it's trying to stay healthy. You
even the hotel bed might be different.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, that's that. I mean, all
pillow,
of that,
like those little things.
all of that has a huge effect on athletes. So it's all, as a coach, it's minimizing all of those external stresses from each competitor, so that they can just do what they do at home.
And also, we're talking about teenagers.
Yeah.
Many distractions.
Yes. Yes.
And they're curious, of course.
Of course.
When they travel, everyone is curious. I think they're even more curious. They want to see the city or talk to people.
Yeah.
How do you set the boundaries for? I mean, they must have fun, right?
Yeah, I feel
well,
like
the good thing about sports as well is that you travel, you get to know different places, different people, different cultures. So what would be like the best limit or the boundary to say, okay, up to here, we have to now.
I think. I think as having been an international coach, I think the biggest thing is Wushu is a performance martial arts. However, it still has the martial arts principles. So discipline, respect, all those aspects are still very, very emphasized through our training. So you won't find, although these are young adolescents, I feel like you'll still find very disciplined athletes. And I mean, as a coach, you sometimes have to be a little strict.
Yes,
and
of course.
I think the biggest thing is, this most international competitions are a couple of days, and saying, look, until you compete,
of course, yes,
we have to keep you healthy, stay healthy,
focused.
They typically have open practice sessions when we arrive early, you know, you as a team, you try to arrive as early as possible so you can acclimate to the time, the weather, the food. That's best case scenario. And then that way, each athlete is prepared. But my rule of thumb is, before you compete, we're focused on competition. After we're done, you can hang out with your friends. You can do whatever you want.
Nice one. So now we're waiting for the podium. Is that right?
They will likely do podiums at the end of this morning's session.
Oh, I
We're
see.
taking a slight break in our event. We just finished boys Nangun B.
Okay.
Women's Nangun B should be underway shortly. Judges are taking a bit of a bio break, but we should be back here soon. Guys, if you're watching us live on YouTube, be sure to ask us any questions that you have, anything you'd like to know more about, and we'll get started soon. For Jianshu, we've got 8 competitors in girls Nangun, so I would say maybe 30 to 45 minutes. We'll start first with boys Jianshu B. We have 11 competitors, and then we'll be going straight into girls Jianshu B, where we have 13 competitors. And I see the comments coming in live. We'll try to get a little bit closer to the mic. Sorry for the volume. Stay tuned. We'll be coming back here shortly with girls Nangun. All right, we see our female Group B Nangun athletes lining up. We've got our first competitor up, Tin Yan Tina Wang from Hong Kong. Looks like we have a total of 8 athletes on the roster, but I see less than 8 athletes lined up, so we'll have to see if any athletes. Really strong performance from Tina Wang. Tina Wang's final score, a 9.0 with a perfect ace score. Our next competitor up is Nazanin Bazar from Iran. Very strong so far from Nazanin. Now, Felipe, one interesting thing about the Nangun is there are requirements for each one of the weapons. So for Nangun, the requirement is that the weapon has to be at least the height of the athlete.
Oh, I see.
Now, one other interesting tidbit, which it'll be interesting to see if we see here at this championships, is there are now composite weapons. So in the past, they were made out of waxed wood. But the difference with the challenge with wood is there's different densities. Some are thicker, some are thinner. Now, Felipe, one interesting thing about the Nangun is there are performance with an 8.91, currently in second place. We see at least, I can make out at least 2 A-judge technical deductions. Again, unfortunately, we can't see what those were, but that affected her overall score. And just as we were talking, I mean, that's a prime example. You see at 8.91, you figure at least 2 A-judge deductions. They were at least at a minimum of 0.1 deduction each. That's 0.2 off the score. And here we see our competitor from Chile, Ignacia Antonia Aranda Ricos.
And she's wearing glasses, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Antonia Aranda Ricos.
Could you tell by her movement that's why she was from a country in Latin America without knowing her name or seeing her face?
Sometimes, some countries you can tell. Like,
really?
Yeah, some countries have a very distinct flavor. I would say that Russian athletes very stand out. Yeah, Japan's Tai Chi competitors have a very distinct flavor. Indonesia's Tai Chi
How would you
competitors
describe
really
this
good.
flavor? Like for the Chinese competitors and for the Russian competitors?
It really depends on the event, but I would say Russian athletes are very strong they have a very strong athleticism. And there we see Ignacia's score 8.50. Now up next, and I believe that this athlete is using a composite southern staff, but this is Boya Liu from China. Now, similar to the boys Nangun, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a really strong performance from Boya Liu. Now, maybe you can see just how crisp the movements are, the precision, I mean the speed. Now, the Nangun is a little bit thicker than the regular staff. So being able to move that and wield that as fast and show that much power is really impressive. I think with it being a composite staff as well, it may be a little bit lighter than wood, but I mean, to accentuate the power, you really have to have, good technique. Here we're coming to the end of the routine. Still strong, still demonstrating power. Very strong performance from China. We'll have to see how this scores, but I think she might be in the top 3. Now, Felipe, you can see just how crisp the movements are, the precision, I mean, the speed. Now, the Nangun is a little bit thicker than the composite staff as well. It may be a little bit lighter than wood, but I mean, to accentuate the power, you really have to have, you know, good technique. Here we're coming to the end of the routine.
Still strong.
It's like color in one end. Oh, 9.12.
9.12, really strong. Wow. You can see perfect A score, no technical deduction. So I mean, that's to be able to. So I guess what we're seeing, typically what we're seeing here today is athletes that are able to keep all of their A scores are breaking 9s. 9.12. That's the highest score that we've seen.
Amazing.
And here we're Jocelyn Kantitara from Indonesia. But yeah, you mentioned the red on the southern staff. Yeah. Some weapons, some of the composite staffs now are coming with a bit of grip on them, or athletes are allowed to add a little bit of grip tape to it because they're so slick. So, and then sometimes it's just a style thing. But you know, you want to stand out.
I see. But picking the right staff does make you more competitive.
It just depends on you, what you prefer. I mean, I know athletes that still prefer wood staffs. Some really like the composite ones because they're light.
You get doesn't necessarily mean it's.
That's right.
It's easier, no?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
You
if
have
anything,
a competitive advantage.
Yeah,
mean that.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. If anything, you know, with it being a little bit more flexible, you can really snap and you can see the staff kind of vibrate and shake. So it really just depends on, you know, your preference, but you become very acquainted with your weapons. I can tell you it's a very sad day when you break your weapon in training. Yeah. Now, this is, of course, Indonesia. Jocelyn is from the girls' B group. The red on the southern staff. Some weapons, some of the composite staffs now are coming with, so, and then sometimes it's just a style thing. But you know, you want to stand out.
I see.
Because they're light.
You get doesn't necessarily mean it's.
That's right.
It's easier, no?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
If anything, competitive advantage.
Yeah, yeah, no, I don't think so. Then you can see the staff kind of vibrate and shake. So it really just depends on, you know, your preference, but you become very
acquainted with your weapons.
I can tell you.
Very strong too.
That's good for second place. We'll have to see if she can hold on to that score. We've still got, looks like at least 1 or 2 other competitors. We'll have to see if any other athletes have dropped. I know that Russia isn't here, so we don't have the Russian athlete. So it looks like at least 2 other competitors up next. Now, Felipe, I'm not seeing any other athletes. I think that was it. That's your top competitors there. So we've got China taking gold, Boya Liu with a 9.12, Jocelyn from Indonesia with a 9.10, and Tina Wong from Hong Kong with a 9.0. Very strong performances. Congratulations to the top 3 placing athletes. And I'm sure we'll see them at the medal ceremony. However, You don't have to wait much. Our next event, athletes are already lining up. For our next event, we have boys Jianshu B group, where we have a total of 11 competitors. And again, we've seen a couple of competitors dropping, so it'll be interesting to see, how the podium finishes in this event will be.
Agora vão sair. Ô Bruno, sabe aquela pessoa que tava aí no corte, não?
Next competitor is from Macau, Chihin Kwang. Macau also historically usually brings a very strong team as well.
O Vitor. Falar nisso, você comeu os pães de queijo que eu deixei de manhã em cima da mesa? Você comeu os seus pães de queijo que eu deixei em cima da mesa pra você, amor?
Chi is 14 years old. Very strong opening sequence.
Você não falou que tá com fome? Vou te levar pra comer.
Now again, Felipe, as we were talking about earlier, particularly in these events, it gets a little bit harder for the athletes to perform, these routines, because particularly in straight sword, where a lot more precise movements are required, there's balances, there's certain movements that need to be executed. The judges know where these movements are, so they're keeping an eye out for where these movements are executed, and they know you can't hide anything from the judges in these types of events. They've done it. They know what the technical requirements for each one is. So if there is any slight deviation from the way that you do it, of course, there's always different interpretations of each routine. However, it's very difficult to hide anything, right? Because you're all required to do the same movements, you may not be accentuating your best techniques or your strengths. So it'll be very interesting to see how this historically usually brings a very strong team as well.
O Vitor. Falar nisso, você comeu os pães de queijo que eu deixei pra você, amor?
Chi is 14 years old.
Leva pra comer.
The judges know where these movements are, so they're keeping an eye out for where these movements are executed.
Executed, and they know you can't hide anything from the judges in these types of events.
Wow, there we go.
9.10, perfect A score. Looks like
Amazing.
you got all full points, no technical deductions.
Amazing.
And our next competitor comes from the United States, Evan Shu. Now, of course, we see his coach in the back, Coach Jiang Bangjun, former China all-national and world champion. I'm sure he is excited to see his athlete compete. Now here's the opening sequence. Now here you can see where each athlete is accentuating. There's a variance for each athlete's style or performance. Now here's the balance. Now you can see no movements, and that's what the
Steady, right?
that's what the judges are looking for. Here we see the pause. No additional movements.
Let's see.
Now here you see you got to keep the sword close. Thrust, here's a drop stance. That's one of the movements that the judges are looking for. An empty stance.
Chain hands, right?
Yep. And closing movements.
Wow, it was really good.
Yeah, strong performance from Jianshu. Now we'll have to see how we score. Now here's the opening sequence.
Style or performance.
Steady,
That's
right?
what, yeah, that's what.
He received a 3. It looks like he received at least one technical deduction.
Could you spot this deduction or no?
From where we're sitting, unfortunately, we're not so close to the carpet, so I can't see what it was. My guess with that, because it looks, the score is still at 8.9, so it was likely a 0.1 or a fraction of a deduction. It might have been a stance. It could have been a slight loss of balance. Typically, the deductions that you see are for stances. In this event, it's usually a stance. The stance is too high, a foot is turned the wrong way, the knee is bent slightly, small things like that. But to your question about, as a person who's not familiar with Wushu, what you can look for, I think the number one thing that stands out is the athleticism of the athlete. Them being able to execute the movements athletically, with power, with speed, technique. And then the other thing that you can do is, in weapon events, is how well does that athlete wield the weapon? Does it look like it's an extension of their arm?
Oh,
the familiarity.
Yeah.
With straight sword, one big thing is being able to utilize your wrist. So if with a straight sword, what you want to look at is the technique at the tip of the sword.
Oh.
There's control, that each slicing and piercing movement. I mean, you want to envision that he's combating someone with that sword.
Oh, okay.
So is the technique being executed in a practical way? Is it a slice? Is it a cut? Is the wrist bending? Is he, attacking, piercing? I think it's just familiarity with the weapon. Is it being utilized in a representative way of, we're using it in combat?
What about the tip of the sword? If it flicks, is it a problem?
So there is a deduction if the weapon becomes deformed. So a stance. The stance is too high, a foot is turned the wrong way, the knee is bent slightly, small things like that. A person who's not familiar with Wushu, what you can look for, I think the number one thing that stands out is the athleticism of the athlete. Them being able to their arm.
Oh,
the familiarity.
Yeah.
With straight sword, one big thing is
Being able to utilize your wrist.
seeing and piercing movement.
I mean, you want to envision that he's combating.
Someone with that sword.
Oh, okay.
So is the technique being also be a deduction? And of course, that was our competitor from Egypt, Tarek Rafat Abdel Karim, with 8.60. Our next competitor is from Paraguay, Franco Sebastian Peralta Pretos.
Na TV, na TV.
Now the other thing, one big thing that stands out is how comfortable the athlete is with the weapon, right? One big thing with using weapons is the faster you go, it's human nature to not want to stand in the way of a sword. So, you will typically see the sword being a little bit away from the body when they're executing fast movements. The sword is moving a little bit away. Here you see in this performance, the sword's a little bit outside. There we see a slight stumble
Yes,
going
I could
into
see
the
that.
stance.
Yeah.
So those are obvious things, and I'm sure the judges will catch that as a loss of balance. Now here we see that. Now see, it wasn't held for 2 seconds. So things like that are obvious things, but again, the judges are also looking for technical techniques. So here the stance, slight wobble there. There are typically speaking, in bare hand events, there are technical deductions for stances and movements. In weapon events, there are specific deductions for that weapon. So if you hold the sword in a certain way where your finger is on the blade,
Yes.
in straight sword, for example,
Yeah.
there's a deduction for that.
Ó a placa lá, ó.
Our next competitor is from Paraguay, Franco Sebastian Peralta.
Pretos.
Na TV, na TV.
Sword. So, you know, you will typically see the sword being a little bit away from the body when they're executing fast movements. You know, the
sword is moving a little bit
away. Here it wasn't held for 2 seconds. So things like that is
obvious things.
But again, the judges are also looking for technical techniques. So here, there are typically speaking, in bare hand events, there are technical deductions for
size. And when you see that the Chinese and the other, like, better athletes as well, you can see that they have dedicated more hours and they have trained harder. Just by seeing the movement, the precision of the movement, right? Is that? I guess I'm asking you, like, you can tell straight off when someone starts, like, doing the event that they have dedicated, like, 10 times more hours to that movement, to that thing, right?
One thing that you have to remember, it's a performance martial arts, right? It's a sport, so, but it's still a martial art. So the big thing that we emphasize is you have to demonstrate your fierceness, your power, your strength.
Sure.
And that's one big reason why the judges are really looking for, the B judges, where your overall performance lies. Superior, average, or inferior. So that beginning is your first opportunity to tell the judges, hey, look at me.
I'm here to fight.
That's
here
right.
To fight, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, I
know I want to engage, right? I really want to.
Yeah. So as a coach, that's one big thing I know that I emphasize, and I know a lot of international coaches emphasize with their athletes is, when you step onto the carpet, step on strong with a strong presence. You know, you don't want to have any holes. You don't want to look like you walk on with no confidence and no strength. So. From the second, one interesting thing is, as you'll see, as athletes step onto the carpet, you want to exhibit that confidence and strength. And there we see the final score, 7.30. We see a series of deductions, and again, it broke below 8s, and that's that technical deductions that we were talking about.
I'm not an expert, but I could see that he wasn't really showing like this fierceness that you mentioned, right? I think he was, I don't know, maybe he was tired, not in a good day, but I could tell that he was not enough, like, confident or not showing enough strength, I guess. And also the deduction that we could spot here during his performance, right?
Yeah, at this level of competition, you just can't afford any technical deductions. And here is a competitor from Vietnam, Tran Nguyen Do Min. Now, Vietnam has typically produced very strong straight sword and spear athletes. And here you can see Tran demonstrating that. I mean, you can see the movements very crisp and clean. Now, there's plenty of room in the top 3. We've got top score is Macau with a 9.10. Then second currently is United States Evan Shu with an 8.93. And Singapore is coming in third with a 8.92. There's still plenty of room to break that top 8-9 score, that gap between 9.10. There's plenty of room for athletes to place in that top 3. We've got a total of 11 competitors. Again, we might have had at this level of competition, you just can't afford any technical deductions. Vietnam has typically produced very strong straight sword and spear athletes, and here you can see Final score 8.75. Looks like there were at least 2 or 3 technical deductions, and I'm assuming the overall B score might have taken a hit too. And I believe currently competing is Shaheen Banitalabi from Iran. Really fast athlete.
Pronto, te dei o que você queria, Bruno? Agora você me dá o que eu quero.
Now, Felipe, this is a prime example of an athlete's different interpretation of the routine. I mean, his speed is very quick. Now, there's a couple of movements that he's moving very quickly through. So it'll be interesting to see if the judges are looking for him to more accentuate those movements, and if he'll take deductions for not, you know, executing those as the other athletes. There we see him going into the balance, a slight difference in how he goes into the movement.
I mean, he really took his time to do the balance.
Yeah. Now there's a little, it looks like there, you know, there's a couple of movements that I'm looking, it looks like there could be a little bit more extension, but I mean, this is a really strong athletic performance.
Very fast, yes.
But again, you know, you still, as we've seen from the other athletes, you still need that overall A score. So it'll be interesting to see how that A scores. Really strong performance. 2 or 3 technical deductions, and I'm assuming the overall B score might have taken a hit too. And I believe currently competing is Shaheen. His speed is very quick. Now there's a couple of movements that he's moving very quickly through. So it'll be interesting to see if the judges are, and how he goes into the movement.
I mean, he really took his time to do the balance.
Yeah. Now there's a, right. So sometimes I believe what we've seen is some of the athletes who might have scored a little bit lower may take a deduction, and it may also impact the B score. So they're getting hit twice for a deduction. So I'm really curious to see how the judges score this.
I'm not so
athlete.
sure if the balance was quite there.
8.96.
Good.
Yeah, only one technical deduction. I can't see the B score, but I mean, with the 8.96, that's good for second place right now.
Amazing.
I mean, really strong athlete. I mean, as a B group athlete, he's got a bright future ahead of him at Worlds.
I'm going to run.
And our current competitor is from New Zealand, Cameron Lee, I'm sorry. That was Cameron Lee from New Zealand. Lee, I'm sorry. Final score 8.30. Looks like there was a series of technical deductions.
Ah, tá. Ok, beleza.
Our next competitor is from Kazakhstan, Danil Orelo. Yeah, he's in.
Posso ir pra nota?
Our next competitor is from Kazakhstan, Danil Orelo.
Final score 8.17. At the number 10, Antonio.
Here we have a competitor from Indonesia, Nelson Luis Fernando. We're still waiting to receive Danil Aurelio's score. Now here we see him going into his balance. Good performance. Athlete looks really tired. Steve Danil Aurelio's score. His balance.
9.07.
Really strong score. That's good for second place. Now we've got one last competitor from Hong Kong, Bo Kai Kiang. Now I know that Hong Kong typically fields a really strong team as well. We'll have to see if he can break into the top 3. I think I can make out his coach on the sidelines, world champion Zhang Xianghui, also strong international competitor herself. Good speed. There you can see the flavor, the crispness.
O almoço nosso vai ser.
Very precise movements, right?
Yeah, one big thing that you'll notice when he stops, right before he stops, there's a sudden freeze and there's no additional movement.
Yeah,
It's
I was
very,
impressed by that.
very difficult. That's very difficult to attain for an athlete. I mean, it takes countless hours of practice to be able to get to that point where you just have the body control to emphasize that freeze.
Yeah, especially after like spinning and after, you know.
Yeah, there you see that loss of balance. That unfortunately is going to cost him at least a 0.1. Now again, the question comes into play, right? He got a 0.1 deduction for that loss of balance. Does that mean that he didn't hold his balance for 2 minutes? Sorry, 2 seconds. So he could get hit with 2 deductions, right? Loss of balance and not holding the balance. Because in order to hold the balance, you have to remain motionless. Now, if you're still moving,
Yeah, he didn't do it.
right? So that could be a 0.2.
He doesn't look happy. I think he knows that.
Yeah, I think he knows it. Good speed. There you can see the flavor, the crispness.
Very precise movements, right?
Yeah, one big thing that you'll notice when he stops for an athlete, I mean, it takes countless hours of practice.
And after, you know.
Yeah, there you see that loss of balance. That unfortunately is going to cost him at least a 0.1.
Really hard. He's got
9.14. It looks like he didn't get deducted for the balance.
Wow.
He might have held it just long enough and then moved out.
Yes.
You know, there may not be the requirement in this routine for him to hold that balance for 2 seconds.
And he's got like the gold medal then with this result, right?
9.14. Yeah, it's good for first place.
Wow, that was impressive. I mean, the fact that he froze and the sharpness and of the movements, I think really helped him to.
And you have to think from the vantage point that we're viewing it. We're viewing it from a side perspective. The judges are looking at him straight on.
Yes.
So they may not have seen, or he may have been moving completely out of the movement when he executed that. That's why it's critical that. But however, I mean, not all the judges are sitting from the same vantage point. So even depending on where the athlete is at the carpet, there may be some movements that they can't see, you know.
And also even like the camera is like shooting from a specific angle.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So it's like someone looking from that angle and pay attention to that perspective.
Yeah, vantage point is a big point, and that's why there are 3 judges, and that's why they're not typically not sitting, you know, right next to one another. It depends on the how they're set up, but it's so again 2 have to agree on a technical deduction, and otherwise it doesn't get deducted. And here we're on to our next event, girls Jianshu B group. There are 13 female competitors. Our first competitor is from Malaysia, Saijie Kelly Chin. Now, Felipe, one interesting thing that I know firsthand as being a coach is, you know, every judging panel may judge different things with different criteria. And so sometimes they may emphasize different techniques, different movements, just depends on the judging panel. So as a coach, it's important, one best practice that I know many international coaches follow is to look at the deduction codes that athletes are receiving. Because that does give you some insight into what the judges are looking for. So if you see that they're deducting for balances, you might tell your athlete, make sure that you hit this balance. Hold that balance a little longer than you typically would to make sure you don't get that deduction. There are 13 female competitors. Our first competitor is from Malaysia, Saijie Kelly Chin. Now, Felipe, one interesting thing, they may emphasize
different techniques, different movements.
just depends on the judging panel. So as a coach, it's important coaches follow is to look at the deduction codes that athletes are receiving.
Yeah, I had the impression that the 9.13.
Yeah, starting out really strong. First competitor.
My
That
God.
first person nerves is not a
Yes.
factor for
Absolutely
Kelly.
not. Yeah.
But yes, to your question, they are both doing the same routine. Yeah.
I had the impression that the balance moment for this girl was different from the other one.
Yeah, I think that comes down to interpretation.
Okay.
Typically, I mean,
Or maybe the angle that we are here.
yeah,
Because she did a balance facing that way,
Yeah.
Whereas the boys were doing the
Yeah.
balance facing this way.
I think that's more interpretation. It just depends. Maybe trying to add a little bit of variance. You know, slight angle deviations aren't usually a problem, but you know, you'll see a lot of different variations. I mean, that's the interesting thing about Wushu. You know, all these athletes are doing the same form, but you've seen it many different, you know, executed a number of different ways. And of course, from Singapore, we've got Isabel Chua competing now. There's that balance.
Oops. Bit wobbly.
There's that empty stance. Good flavor and rhythm. And we'll have to see aren't usually a problem, but you know, you'll see a lot of different variations. I mean, that's the interesting thing about Wushu. You know, all these athletes are doing the same form, but you saw competing now.
Bit wobbly. Can add like this, this dance type of
Like grace.
nuance, grace. Is that how you analyze?
I don't think so. I think what you're starting to see is like some of the girls are starting to outperform
That's
a
what
lot
I'm
of the
saying.
guys.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm impressed. Some of them. Wow. look at
Isabella's
this
score,
score.
9.18.
That's what I'm talking about. They outperforming the boys here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I
Because
think
of the precision, I think.
yeah,
and the
I-
focus.
the flexibility and the grace. I mean, this form requires a lot of flexibility, a lot of dynamic, what I would say graceful, but
Yeah,
there's
it's
still
scoring high
aggressive
because of the
movements.
B, right?
Yeah, that was a perfect A score.
Yeah.
She had no technical deductions. That B performance. I mean, I think it just depends
That's what
on.
I'm asking. I get the impression that the performance for girls is easier for the boys, or is it just a wrong perception or?
I think it just depends on the athlete. I mean, there are some male athletes that are extremely graceful and very explosive and move really quickly. There are some female athletes. I mean, you'll see as we get into Daoshu in the next couple of events, you'll see the disparities the same. I mean, there's girls that are extremely powerful and strong, just as fierce, if not more so, than some of the boys.
Would you say that they could compete against each other, boys and girls, or?
I would say that the playing field is fairly equal, but it's still separated, based on gender. I don't know. I mean, maybe in the future, you never know.
Yeah.
But so far, I mean, both are. It's almost interchangeable. I mean, the difficulty movements that they're executing are, equally the same at the adult levels.
Because from where we are here, a bit far away from the arena, and some girls, they have short hair, for example. Some boys, they have long hair. We can't really see the face if it's a boy or a girl sometimes. And by the movements, I can really tell if it's a boy or if it's a girl, sometimes.
If you were to watch a video and you would blur out the face, you might know the techniques, the level of boys and girls is equal. I mean, they're strong, perfect A score. She had no technical deductions. That B performance, I mean, I think it just depends on.
I'm asking, I get the impression that the performance for girls is easier for the boys, or is it just a wrong perception?
And move really quickly. There are some female athletes. I mean, you'll see as we get into Daoshu in the next couple of events,
You'll see that it's fairly equal, but it's still separated.
On gender. I don't know. I mean, maybe in the future, difficulty movements that they're executing are, equally the same at the adult levels.
Because from where we 7.95.
Now we see a series of technical deductions. Again, I mean, at this level,
like a tradition of Wushu as well, right?
I don't. I'm not familiar with their team, but there's a lot of new teams coming up. But again, this is the juniors level, so these are athletes that are being groomed for adult. So these are still fairly young athletes. Here we have Erica Lee from Canada. I'm sure one of our other commentators, Alan Tang from Wushu Canada, is who is commentating in Arena 1, is slightly peering over at this moment.
Por isso que eu tô falando. Gruda aqui, né? Lá na frente do JK é outro não.
If you're just tuning in, you are checking out the Group B Girls Jianshu. Group B, of course, is typically 12 to 15-year-olds. Of course, it's a calendar date, so it depends on when they were born. But typically, you're going to see competitors between 12 and ranging from 12 to 15 years. And then also, they are performing the first set of international competition routines for Jianshu. Now again, and if you're not familiar with Wushu, what you're going to be looking for is the judging panel is set up of 3 A judges and 3 B. Canada is who is commentating in Arena 1 is slightly peering over at this moment.
Alguém tá talentando. Por isso que eu tô falando. Lá na frente do JK.
Out the Group B Girls Jianshu. Depends on when they were born. Fluidity of the movement, speed, power, harmony. Basically, how strong the athlete is.
8.95. Canadian athletes.
We see at least one technical deduction. Again, unfortunately, I can't see it from here, but that, you know, that's a point one deduction typically.
But it's still very strong, right?
Still strong, yeah. 8.95. We've had some podiums in the 8.9s.
Exactly.
And here we have Gabin Go from Korea. Korea, of course, has a couple of strong female straight sword athletes. Hijo Seo comes to mind, very strong competitor. We'll see how they're developing their junior athletes here. So far, she looks really strong.
Yes. Great performance.
Gabin is 15 years old, so she is topping out, you know, the age category for this event. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, as athletes develop and mature, you know, their bodies start to develop and they become stronger. You know, they develop more muscle mass, their growth. You know, it helps with Wushu. But funny enough, in one of our first events, we had China, who was on the younger age bracket. I mean, he dominated the division. So that just goes to show you, it doesn't really matter what your age is. It's, you know, based on what your overall skill set.
Yes.
Here's the ending of the form. Good overall performance, very strong, good flavor, good rhythm, good pacing. Korea, of course, has a very strong competitor. We'll see how they're developing their junior athletes here. So far, she looks really strong.
Yes.
18 years old, so she is topping out,
You know, the age
category for this event. To develop and they become stronger. You know, they
Yes,
develop
good
more
talent,
muscle
yes.
mass. Their growth, you know, it helps vision. So that just goes to show you, it doesn't really matter what your age is. It's, you know, based on what your overall skill set is.
That's the second.
I mean, generally, it's the overall performance. It's the whole thing combined. But the beginning movements give you a good indication of where the athlete may place. Are they a superior? Are they average? It gives you at least a rough indication of what there may be. And we see Gabin Go's score is 9.03.
These girls, they're doing really well.
Yeah, yeah. But that overall B score is basically comprised, you know, it's really the overall, you know, performance from start to finish. So, you know, the beginning can be a good insight. So you say, okay, this athlete is superior in the third category. So they're looking like 4.2, 4.3. And then as the performer moves on, that judge may apply some deductions. They'll be like, oh no, that was they broke rhythm there. They may be, you know, there'll be a couple of deductions there, and then they deduct from that. And then, so that's why it's really the overall performance. They can still do deductions, and then if, you know, the athlete falls and it breaks the rhythm, so there could be additional things that could be deducted. So although the beginning is when they start thinking of where that athlete might place, it's really the overall performance. I mean, it's not done until it's done.
And I guess my question maybe was, can you divide the routine into like moments? Specific moments, or no? The routine is just like beginning and end?
The routine is, for training purposes, it's broken up into 4 sections. And for teaching purposes, 4 sections.
Only for teaching purposes?
For teaching and training purposes. Competition-wise, no. It's really, the B judge is looking at everything. Yeah, yeah.
I see.
Yeah. And this is, of course...
But you can tell, this is the fourth stage or third stage?
Yes.
Yeah, but that doesn't really matter for the judges?
No, not for the judges, no. And this is Margaret Shi from the United States, looking strong so far. For this category, for B group, it does the division of the form, section 1, section 2, 3, and 4, isn't really they're looking like 4.2, 4.3, and then as the performer, you start thinking of where that athlete might place. It's really the overall performance. I mean, it's not done until it's done.
And I guess my question maybe was, can you do specific moments or no? The routine is just like beginning and end.
The routine is for training purposes. It's for teaching and training purposes. Competition-wise, no. It's really
the judges looking at everything.
Yeah. Difficulty movements, where they are in the form. First section, where they are, beginning, ending, middle, and then the sequence. So that way the judges have a good perspective of this is where this movement is coming up so they can keep an eye out for. But here, for international routines, it doesn't really hold any bearing. I mean, it's really, the B judge is just looking at overall performance. And in juniors, there is only A judge and a B judge. In adult world championships, there's also a C judge. We don't have a C judge here, so there, the overall routine is everything.
So I guess Margaret's got 9.07.
9.07.
The girls, they're doing really, really well, really high standard.
Yeah, they're all breaking. A lot of them are breaking nines.
9 is the common ground here.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. And here we've got Annalise Jenks from New Zealand. .07.
The girls, they're doing really, really well, really high standard.
Yeah, they're all breaking. A lot of them are breaking.
9 is the common ground here.
Yeah. Final score for Annalise is 8.72. And you can hear the crowd going wild for our next competitor, Brenda Porfiro from Brazil. You can see the stand is going crazy. Here's our opening sequence.
You see any Brazilian flavor there, Mario?
Yeah, her overall rhythm is very different. Like the timing, the pacing, the things that she accents. Her opening sequence.
Like Wushu, and you're an athlete or becoming an athlete, what do you have to do to be qualified? What is the qualifying process to take part in this big championship?
So typically speaking, every country will host a trials to select the national team. It's very similar to this actually. You'll likely have to perform your events. There we go, 9.05.
He's amazing. Really proud to see like a Brazilian athlete doing so well in a competition like this.
9.05 is good for 4th place. I mean, she's at the top of the ranks. She's got tough competition.
Yes.
I mean, you've got probably some of the highest scores that we've seen consecutively in one event.
Beautiful. And then you're saying that there are trials
so
in
typically
each company, in each country?
Yeah, every country will typically have a trials. Now, of course, it depends on the number of athletes that are in that country. I mean, we have a lot of developing countries in the past where there just aren't that many athletes. But typically, it's becoming more and more competitive. So, for example, in the U.S., we have a trials. Junior World Wushu Championships is every 2 years. And then the Senior Championships is also every 2 years, and they are opposite of one another.
The country's team, right?
Right.
And after you have we have formed your country's team, you can start competing in international championships.
That's right. So there's.
What if the levels are different? For example, a country that has no tradition in Wushu and has just started like training a few athletes, and they think they're good enough, and when it comes to international championship like this, they realize that their level is really, really low. Can that happen or no?
It does happen. I mean, particularly in a lot of developing countries. But I'll tell you one thing. The interesting and exciting thing for me to see is, I mean, a lot of these countries that you're seeing compete today, some of these countries are emerging countries that at one point were scoring very low at Worlds. And now, as the sport evolves more and more, becomes more popular, athletes become better and better and better.
I guess this is a positive thing about having international championships, because when they see the top athletes performing, they learn a lot, right? By just seeing, by observing, and then they take that lesson back home, and then they develop their performance even further.
Well, I think that's why an event like this is great, having a Junior World Championships. I mean, this is a great opportunity for a lot of these young men and women to. Now, of course, it depends on the number of athletes that are in that country. I mean, we have a lot of developing countries in the past where there just aren't that many. It's becoming more and more competitive. So, for example, in the U.S., we have a trials. Junior World Wushu Championships is every 2 years. And then the...
So you have we have formed your country's team, you can start competing in international championships?
That's right. So there's...
What if the levels are different? For example, a country that...
It does happen. I mean, particularly in a lot of developing countries.
They see the top athletes performing, they learn a lot, right? By just seeing, by observing, and then they take that lesson back home. And then
senior level.
This is really important, right?
Yeah,
really, really important.
One of the major rule changes from this World Championships is that in Group A, previously athletes had to do compulsory routines, similar to what we're seeing here. From Macau, Wang scored 8.92. But previously, Group A athletes had to do these compulsory routines. They had their own set. And however, this year, they're allowing athletes to do optional routines, which are the routines that typically they would do at the senior levels.
Sure.
So it's, I think it's great that the International Wushu Federation is thinking about how they can best develop athletes. Because what they found in the past is if an athlete does a compulsory routine, it's not practical to prepare them for the senior levels, and those are the athletes that are at that age pushing the senior divisions, to do compulsories and then have to do optionals at World Championships as a senior. So this is great because it gives them that opportunity. Now, they're not being judged on difficulty movements, so there's no C component,
right?
but it's a great preparation for them. I think what you're going to see is a lot of these A group athletes from the other events. You're going to start to see a lot of their names pop up at senior world championships, and I think with this rule change, they're going to come a lot more prepared, and I think you're going to see the level even rise.
Yes.
And of course, currently on deck is our athlete from Indonesia, Patricia Geraldine. Patricia's 14 years old. Again, really strong. International Wushu Federation is thinking about how they can best develop athletes, because what they practical to prepare them for the senior levels, and those are the athletes that are at that age pushing the senior. This is great because it gives them that opportunity. Now, they're not being judged. Yeah, it's a great preparation for them. I think what you're going to see is a lot of the. I think you're going to see the level even rise.
Yes.
They've got more experience in that age bracket. They've been doing the routines, a little bit longer. But it's really exciting for me to see that a lot of the junior athletes, look at that, 9.11.
This is crazy.
And
wow.
so, we've got Patricia, pushing the level, at a, probably in the middle of the age bracket. It's really great to see. You're seeing younger and younger athletes sometimes outperforming some of the older athletes.
Yeah. And it depends on what age they started as well, right? Because if they started like 2 years earlier than the other ones, they have 2 more years of experience.
Yeah,
right?
That's one big thing that in the senior levels, you've got a lot of senior athletes that, without a doubt, they've got many years of training experience. But in juniors, you really have some of these athletes may have only been doing Wushu a short time, and they just excel really quickly.
Then would you say that that's when talent comes into place?
At the senior levels, more so, but some of these athletes, I mean, if you're athletically gifted, it can help a lot. But I mean, at the end of the day,
talk a lot about talent, or you don't prefer to use this?
I think.
What do you prefer to focus on?
At the end of the day, natural talent and athleticism can go a long way, but it can't beat dedication. Like that heart component, you can't build that into an athlete. An athlete has to love what they do and enjoy it. And those that are committed. I mean, I've seen many athletes throughout the years where athletes are dedicated beyond belief, and they may not have the physical attributes to do it, but they just have the willpower to train and overcome adversity.
They really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, and sometimes that adversity makes them an even stronger competitor because they know how hard it is to attain that level.
More years of experience.
Yeah,
right?
that's one big thing that in the senior many years of training experience, but in juniors you really have some of these athletes may have only been doing Wushu a short time and they just excel really quickly. If you're athletically gifted, it can help a lot. But I mean, at the end of the day,
a lot about talent.
Natural talent and athleticism can go a long way, but it can't beat that into an athlete. An athlete has to love what they do and enjoy it. And if you're tuning in live on Wushu TV, make sure you're also checking out our Instagram page at IWF_official. We've got live posts going up daily, multiple times a day, of interviews and videos coming up. So you make sure you don't want to miss any of that. Also, you can check out our IWF page on Facebook at International Wushu Federation Official. Final score 8.61 for Abigail. And here we have Yintren Li from Singapore.
Vai ter 10 minutinhos pra comer e voltar.
Now we've only got 2 more competitors left. We've got Canada next, and then we'll be on into our next event. Boys Daoshu B, followed immediately by girls Daoshu B. And that will be it for our morning session. And here we have Yintren Li from Singapore. Final score for Singapore, 8.75. Looks like we've got about 3 or 4 technical deductions, so that definitely pushed that score down. And here we've got our final competitor on deck, preparing to go up. From Canada, Zaina Shaltut. I believe it's safe to say this has been a really close competition. We've got, so far, let's see here, we've got Macau in first place with an 8.9, I'm sorry, we've got Malaysia, or no, wow, even closer, Singapore with a 9.18.
Very high.
Yeah, then we've got Malaysia with a 9.13. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm seeing Indonesia with a 9.11. And I mean, look at the breakdown. I mean, it's a fraction. It's coming down to fractions of overall that B performance score.
Yes. And then you have 9.
I believe it's safe to say this is looks like the competitors for the next event are already lined up and getting ready to enter the arena. We are going on to Daoshu.
So now we're changing weapons.
That's right. It looks like girls may go first. I'm seeing girls line
Yeah.
up first. Athletes in certain events. So 8 places. Looks like we've got a couple of good, strong teams. We'll have to see who comes out on top.
Ó, fala pro Vitão aí que
Our first competitor up is from Hong Kong, Michelle Young.
eu disse lá no clube.
All right, so it looks like the boys Daoshu Group B event has been moved to Arena 1 in order to make up time due to a couple technical errors from this morning. So if you'd like to see boys Daoshu, you can tune into our live stream on Arena 1. But of course, we'd love you to stay with us. Here we see Michelle Young from Hong Kong wrapping up her form. Strong performance.
Final score 9.06.
Final score for Michelle Young, 9.06. Our next competitor is from Argentina, Julieta Calderon.
Tem que abrir, né? Pra poder pegar.
Mario, can you have two representatives of the same nationality in the same event?
You can. So A group athletes can compete in 4 events. B group athletes can compete in 3 events. C group athletes can compete in 2 events. So there may be overlap. It depends on your country. So if your country is dominant in one event, then yeah, you could have
like 3 Chinese athletes.
yeah, you could have. Typically speaking, they'll try to limit, like, I mean, strategy-wise, right? If I'm a country and I'm trying to medal in as many events as possible, it's typically not good to put all my athletes in the same event because they're competing against one another. So typically what you'll see is most countries will enter one athlete into each event. Can compete in 4 events. B group athletes can compete in 3 events. Yeah, you could have. typically speaking, they'll try to limit, like, I mean, strategy-wise. Final score for Julieta Calderon, 8.20. Our next competitor up from India, Niktibi Wangkerafam. Now, Felipe, as opposed to straight sword, in this broadsword compulsory, there is a jump that needs to be executed. So what you'll find is it's called a jump inside kick, also known as a tornado kick.
Tornado kick.
Yeah, so what you do is you take off with both feet, you jump, do an inside crescent kick, and then you have to land in a horse stance. So one thing that you'll want to see is as the athlete lands, that they land solid with no additional movement. Now again, those are requirements for more for seniors. So I'm curious to see how the judges score the difficulty movement here, right? Because there's no requirement of those difficulty techniques. Now the overall movement still needs to be executed correctly. So I'm really curious to see how the judges score this. This athlete from India, for example, landed and then moved out of the technique. I don't think that she would be penalized for that, but again, you never know what, you know, different judging panels may emphasize different movements, different requirements, so we'll see.
Na transmissão.
Niktibi Wangkerafam. Now movements. Now again, those are requirements for more for seniors. So I'm curious to see, right? Because there's no requirement of those difficulty techniques. Now the overall movement still needs to be executed correctly. Nangtibi's final score, 8.30. Again, we're typical what we're seeing. We're seeing a couple of technical deductions. Our next competitor is from Iran, Fatime Dorche. Really strong opening.
Really strong, yes. Impressive.
There you see that landing. No additional movements.
Amazing.
Very crisp.
Yes. Look how she freezes.
Yeah, the postures. I mean, like that what you saw, it takes a really experienced athlete to be able to understand, you know, how a posture is executed, but then how to make it look even better. You know, that additional lean, the stance, the posture, the positioning, you know, her eyes, all that is, I mean, it takes really experienced athletes.
She seems to be a bit older as well, though.
The Iran team always fields a really strong, typically always fields a really strong team. They've had a lot of really strong world medalists at the last couple of years, world championships. Yeah, Fatima is 15 years old. So she is
a big girl as well, right?
Yeah, she's in this B group, so she's at the top end of the age group for this division.
Really strong.
Yeah, this should score well.
Look, the way she leaves.
Yeah, I mean presence, it's
Yes.
everything. Really strong opening.
Really strong, yes. Impressive.
There you see that landing. No additional movements. Is very how a posture is executed, but then how to make it look even better. You know, really strong.
Typically, always
Field's a really strong team. They've had a lot of really strong.
9.10. There we go.
Puts her in first place.
First place, you could tell.
We've got about 3 more competitors left.
Yeah.
We've got Turkey, Japan, and Macau, so we'll have to see how the other
Yeah.
competitors. Japan's got a strong team. Macau's got a strong team.
You could really tell that she did really well. From beginning to end.
Yeah, and that's something that's really difficult to get. I mean, that's not something that you can really coach your athletes on. I mean, it's just something that they develop. I mean, that confidence, you know, you have to try to nurture it as much as you can as a coach, but it's really comes from
Personality
within.
thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Não vou ver o Borel dele, não. Mas será que foi só o beijinho ou o Borel também?
This is Sila Ozge Ogden from Turkey. Turkey, and again, another country that fields really strong competitors. Sila is 14 years old. It's always amazing for me to see how how you have to try to nurture it as much as you can as a coach, but it's really comes from
Personality
within.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This is Sila Ozge Ogden
then from
Final score 8.85.
8.85 for the Turkish athlete.
Here's our next competitor from Japan, Rika Nakamura. Now, Felipe, one other interesting thing to see is the trends in Wushu, like how many competitors typically there are in different events. Like some years there are a ton of broadsword athletes, sometimes there are not so many, sometimes there are more straight sword competitors. It'd be interesting to do a study for someone out there to see like what at the junior levels every year, what events typically have Nakamura. This is probably one of our smallest division this morning, with only 7 female competitors, with one with athlete not here. So it's interesting how that affects the podium finishes. And Rika Nakamura with a 9.04. These girls are unstoppable. And of course, preparing to go on, our last competitor for the morning's Arena 2 session. That is Pek Iwang from Macau.
And as a coach, would you prefer to compete with more competitors or less competitors? I mean, some people might think that you have less competitors might increase your chances of podium, medaling.
I have seen that, sometimes you chase those divisions where there are less athletes to be more competitive. I think to some extent all coaches keep an eye out for what's going on. But the interesting thing, it's impossible to gauge. One year you may see at one World Championships maybe, a division where you have like 6 competitors. And so, I'll admit to it, there have been times where you make an athlete say, we're going to focus on this because there aren't that many competitors.
And when you
get there, it sways, the pendulum swings the other way because every coach was thinking just like you, and you suddenly got a field of 20 competitors, and you're like,
horrible strategy.
So what I've learned is just do what makes sense for the athlete.
Yes, absolutely.
At the end of the day, you can't control what divisions. I mean, you can try to predict future events. Sometimes the newer events, when new events get brought on and, rules change, it's slow to adopt. And so sometimes you'll get that. But it's impossible to gauge, who's competing. You never know. I mean, the top athletes may get injured. They may be out. And
some people might think that you have less competitors might increase your chances of podium, medaling.
I have seen that, sometimes you chase
divisions where what's going on.
But the interesting thing, it's impossible to gauge. One year you may see at one
World Championships
maybe, a division swings the other way
because every coach was thinking just
like you, and you suddenly got a field of 20 competitors, and you're like,
horrible strategy.
So change. It's slow to adopt, and so sometimes you'll get that. It's really hard to predict, and I have had times where you try to predict it and it comes back and hurts you in the long run. Macau's final score, last competitor, 9.12, and she ends with a gold medal, taking first place.
You see? The last ones can be the first ones.
You never know. And that wraps it up for our morning session. Be sure to tune in this afternoon. In Arena 1, we are going to have girls Changchuan Group A, boys Nangun Group A, and girls Nangun Group A. In Arena 2, you can join us for boy and girls 42 forms Taiji Chuan, girl and boys, girls Changchuan Group B, boy and girls Gunshu Group C, and boy and girls Jianshu Group C. This is Mario Martinez, and
this is Felipe Lacerda. See you in the afternoon session.
gente... Quando vai comprar, a gente pede professor de academia e preciais. Oi. Desliga.